Today I will be interviewing Aurora Mounier. I will be calling her Profe Mounier during the interview. She is my former Spanish teacher. She is 32 years old. Her cultural ties is with Spanish. She has been teaching Spanish for a while now at Mound Westonka, and she just recently last year moved to Mounds View, and she has grown up in a Spanish culture. And as a student taking Spanish, I just thought that it would be exciting to do a interview on the Spanish culture. So I know her because she was my Spanish teacher, and I have gotten to kind of grow up with her, and I got to start my love for Spanish with her as an 8th grader, and I am now a senior, so I've really been getting into the Spanish culture. So yeah, this is Profe Mounier.
What is some traditional Spanish festivals and what are their significances?
Okay, so in Spain, I mean, just like in the United States, there is some variation in culture, and there are several regions in Spain that have their own very special festivals and things like that. Like a lot of people have heard of the Tomatina, which is a festival where they throw tomatoes at each other and have this huge tomato fight, and it's a touristy event. And that one is very popular and well known. There's the Corrida de Toros, which is the running of the bulls, and that goes along with San Fermines, and that's where, the part that we United States Americans, we see a lot of that is where people run in front of the bulls and try not to be gored while they run through the streets. Let's see. But there are several other ones that go along with traditions that we here in the United States have, or that are religious in nature. But in Spain, the religious parts of them are more part of the broader culture of Spain, and it's not so much part of it's not part of practicing religion necessarily. And those are the ones that I am most familiar with. For example, the feria and but also the Holy Week celebrations. And so Holy Week celebrations in Spain, they last, of course, the entire week before Easter. And the southern part of Spain, in Sevilla, in Andalusia specifically, they have one of the largest celebrations for Holy Week in all of Spain. And for this, every day there are multiple parades from multiple churches to the main cathedral in Spain, or in Sevilla, where each church has its patron saint, and that church has a float, like we would call it a float, but like the float is not carried by a car or a vehicle, it's carried by people, and it's considered part of paying your penitence, like as a sinner to the church, to carry the burden of the float. You carry your patron saint on your back, and it depicts something. A scene. The float has a scene from the Bible or Holy Week, or depicting Jesus or Mary, or something on it, and they carry it through the streets to the cathedral, and so the whole thing is on show. And it's for people who are religious, it's an extremely important experience. And then for the people who are there just for the tourism of it or the culture piece of it, there's a huge amount of fashion that goes with Holy Week, and every parade that you go to, there are certain colors for each church and saint that you would wear. There's music in the streets, so people are singing. Each the church, of course, like I said, they're different outfits. So, and the important members of the church are all participating in some way, and there are different roles that people can play in the parades and things that they can carry. And people along the sides of the route might also be singing. They do call and responses sometimes, and Sevilla and Seville specifically, this part of their year is so important that they have a printed schedule, like a brochure of when each church is going and what the route will be and the timelines, and the groups from the churches are practicing all year round to make sure that they will be able to make the corners with these floats, because the streets in Seville they're not usually, especially because most of these churches are along in the center of the city, and that's the old part of the city, so the streets are only wide enough for one vehicle or what used to be like a horse-drawn cart or mule-drawn cart thing. So they have to take these huge car-sized floats that they're carrying on their backs and make corners, and the streets aren't straight, and so like it's a huge deal. And if your float makes it in without having any issues, or it's considered a huge success. And your success is also a boon to God. Anyway, and then there are just church bells going off all the time, and then in true Spanish fashion, there's never even the sad occasion of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ is then celebrated later. So once you finish, there are parties everywhere. And so the whole week is a celebration, and it's chaos in the streets, and the whole city is overrun with people from all over Spain who just come to Sevilla just for that week. The floats are beautiful. Some of them are hundreds of years old, and they're all hand carved, or they have plaster molds and statues that have been painted, and many of them are gilded, painted with gold. And just even to go to the main cathedral in Sevilla and go and look at the floats is a big deal there, because they'll all be held there in the main cathedral for a while. And so just going to look at looking at history. And it's just, I lived in Seville when I was there, in Sevilla when I was there, and so being able to be there once while it was going on was great. But then the second time I went and visited was also during Holy Week, and it was nice not to be in Sevilla for that, because it's sandy. They also do this in Barcelona, like in all over Spain. The best place to be during Holy Week in Spain is considered Sevilla.
Have you attended it before? Have you gone? Yeah.
I didn't go to any of the church services. Because I'm not Catholic, and the practicing Catholics there, to go and sit in on their services would be religious tourism, and I just don't feel comfortable doing that, and also not being baptized in the Catholic Church, I feel like that would be a little disrespectful. But to go and watch the whole spectacle of the parades, and understanding what the roles are, the penitentes, and that was really fun. I also saw one in a town, Cayenne. We were out for tapas late at night, or 10 o'clock at night, and all of a sudden there was a silent procession. So some of them are not quite as jubilant, but they were carrying their float in complete silence. And the penitentes were hitting themselves with cords for for punishment and whatever. But so all you heard the whole time was this slap, and everything else was silent. So it's led by candles, and it was after dark, and that was one of the first ones I had ever seen after dark, and that one was spectacularly beautiful. I wish I knew more specifics about like the saint of their church and what their cloth was about, but not belonging to that church or like belonging to that actual culture or being part of that town. I didn't know specifically what that one was.
Yeah.
So, but it was really cool to see. And everyone walks around the streets dressed to the nines during that week.
Yeah.
Because it's very fashion forward, like fashionable.
Right.
Week.
Yeah. How has Spain's history helped shape its culture today?
Well, Spanish history, Spain is located on the Iberian Peninsula in southern Europe, and so its proximity to the Mediterranean and Africa itself have a huge influence on Spain. Spain has Spain has like a monoculture in a sense because of their history with the dictator Franco and his push to have a one culture, one people. But through history, Spain has been conquered by tribes from Africa, so the African peoples. It's been the Romani people are a large part of the culture there, although not treated well. And also, you have Northern Europeans who pushed out, so there's this huge mix of cultures there. And it makes it a really rich environment for art, music, and architecture.
Yep.
So over and through history, you will see, cave drawings and dwellings that look more African in nature, to very Renaissance Roman architecture added into the same buildings that have Arab, African architecture with collegial arches and especially in the south of Spain where I spent most of my time in Andalusia, that architecture is called Mudéjar architecture, and you will find it in places like Córdoba, Granada, Sevilla, and all the little towns around there.
Yeah.
Like some of the best examples are like if you were to go to in Sevilla, the cathedral there, they took what was a mosque, so a place of worship for Islam, and when the Catholics came back and reconquered south of Spain from the Africans, they and the Arab peoples, the Islam, they took over the cathedral. So it's like, they plant their flag in the cathedral and they say, no, this is a Catholic church, and they made it into a cathedral. Well, it already had a structure, and the mosque is generally just a rectangular structure with a tower. They call the tower a minaret. And what they did there is they added around that main structure, they added to make it a cathedral, and a cathedral is going to be in the shape of a cross. So they expanded and they made it into a Gothic cathedral. Yeah. But it also has like Roman columns in some areas and others. But they used the minaret, so they used the tower that was actually original to the mosque and just made it into the bell tower by adding the top on the minaret to the bell tower. And that one is an example. There's the Mezquita de Córdoba, which is probably one of my favorite places that I've ever heard. Because it is a mosque, or it was a mosque, added to over hundreds and hundreds of years by different Muslim leaders, and so expanded by one king. I can't remember what they called kings. I have to go back and look at my notes from when I lived there. But so they would add and add and add onto it. The inside is made to look like you're walking through a long tree forest. with double arches on the columns. The columns are marble and the arches are red and white brick.
Yeah.
And in the Quran, it says that you are not allowed to depict humans or most animals. So in their artwork, you will find poetry in calligraphy or verses from the Quran in calligraphy. Sometimes birds and fish. And those and then their tile work and geometric patterns. So and flowers. So everything in their artwork is made to depict the natural world, and then with poetry. And these beautiful arches, and it's made to look like I said, like depth, like you're walking through this huge forest.
Yeah.
But then, of course, the Catholics came back and reconquered Spain and kicked the Muslims out and claimed the cathedral as their own. And fortunately, they didn't really destroy all of the fabric, or like the architecture. They added in some Catholic spaces. They added on like a temple here or there, and so you can still see the original mosque.
Yeah.
But you can also see where they've added on the traditional Catholic parts.
Yeah.
The artwork inside then would be depictions of the saints and Jesus, and the crucifix, all of those things. There's a lot of like art and architecture. You'll see a big mix, but chess is a big deal in Spain. Chess came from Peter.
Yeah.
And so, like, that is a game that's played there. Go to any, Mercado Libre or, like, an artisan's shop, so, like, all these handy, as they say in Spanish, with English braided, right, handicrafts, artisanal stores where they make these gilded chess sets. Even the word in Spanish for chess is ajedrez, and that aje sound comes straight from the Arab languages. Inside the language itself, there are a bunch of Arab words. In places like Toledo, in Spain, you will also find that inside the city proper, you can see the mix of the three main religions, Judaism, Catholicism, and the Muslim Arab influences, because Toledo was one of the places where populations of all three major religions lived in peace for one of the longest periods of time in Spain. And so there are aspects of art and architecture there that live in even just like the stone carvings on the streets and things like that from all three.
Yeah.
Also, because it's a peninsula, it was insulated a little bit more from the rest of Europe. So it didn't have as much, there hasn't been as much influence of like the Scandinavian countries or like the white people down. And that also shows like people's skin tones and their phenotypes, right? So you'll have a little bit darker skin tone or features, as well as dark hair and dark eyes. Not that there aren't blonde people around Spain as well, but just you can see that it's a much more southern European country, much more like southern Italy, and that is also it shows in their diet. I mean, there's just a lot that is very insular to Spain because of its geography, but also like those mix of cultures. And again, because of the Catholicism being like the Catholic monarchs coming in and taking over, and the country itself has a huge Catholic culture. Not that everyone practices Catholicism. Like, there's a large Mormon population there. There's a large, there's still a Jewish population there. There's Islamic population there. There's a lot of people moving up from Africa. But it itself, overall, the things they celebrate and the things you see are going to appear very Catholic.
Okay.
And that has a lot to do with the history
your favorite Spanish meal and why?
Okay, so this is a little tricky because I love Spanish foods. They're much more simple than or just meals in general are a little more simple. But some of the foods that I really love are coqueta, which is I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like a hush puppy, but without it's not mashed potatoes. It's cream and some cheese and ham, jamon, right?
Yep.
And then it's fried, but they're cold soups. And I'm not a huge gazpacho fan, but this salmorejo is a soup that they have there, and it's a tomato-based soup that I really like. They use like day-old bread or stale bread, and they mix it in with like stewed vegetables.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law is from the Canary Islands, and on the Canary Islands they have some specific things that I really like. They have a sauce they call mofo. So mixed with olive oil and some spices. They either have a red or a green sauce, and then they make what's called papas arrugadas. So papas arrugadas are wrinkly potatoes, and it's like little seedling potatoes, and you boil them. It originally would have been boiled in salt water from the Pacific Ocean because they're on the island.
Yeah.
And in order to make it now, you put a ton of salt in water with the potatoes, and you put a lemon in, and then you hang like a cheesecloth on the top so it doesn't boil over. And you boil the seedling potatoes in it until for a really long time. Then you take it out, and the potatoes all once you take the water away, they all like shrivel and get super wrinkly.
Yeah.
So they're wrinkly potatoes that they take on the lime and the salt. And then you put the red or the green sauce on top. And papas arrugadas, and they serve them with like a meat generally or seafood goods. The Canada. They have all of but so I really like that. And then every Spanish-speaking country that I've been to has a different plantain dish. And so I love cooked banana, cooked plantain.
Yeah.
So on the Canary Islands, my brother's mother-in-law, they get these teeny tiny little plantains, and you cut them in half, and then you smash them, and bake them, and like that. And I think it's similar to the way Cubans might do it, but they share a lot of culture with Cuba, actually, which is interesting in the Canary Islands. So it's hard to pick, but jamon iberico and jamon serrano are also, I would say, if you're traveling to Spain and you don't have them, why would you them? You go into any bar or restaurant and they'll have a ham hock or like pork leg, cured pork leg hanging from the ceiling, or multiple, and then they'll have one ready to cut. And it's just the most delicious. Or it's like prosciutto, but it's not. It's not the same. Because the pigs in Spain are treated better than a lot of Americans like me who have dogs. They treat their pigs like they treat our dogs, basically. They're out in the fields living their best lives untouched. They eat acorns and really, really good food, and then their last few weeks of life, they're finished off with acorns. So the meat has a very different taste. And it's very low fat. And it's just
sounds really
good. Meat candy. It is. Apologies to any of my vegan and vegetarian listeners.
Yeah, that sounds really good. What are some common misconceptions about the Spanish culture?
I think that a lot of people assume that all people who speak Spanish are similar or have similar culture, and that is just not true at all. There are 21 Spanish-speaking countries around the world. One of them is in Africa. the people who speak Spanish in Africa are not going to share as many things in common with the Spanish people who, or people who speak Spanish in Spain, people who speak Spanish in South America, especially at the tip of Argentina. Or it's going to come down to a lot more like politics and religion and the culture of your area, geography, and all those things that make a difference. Spanish people cannot handle spicy food. A spicy food for a person from Spain has a lot of garlic and red onion in it.
Oh, interesting.
That's considered spicy. So taking someone out for Thai food from Spain when they come to visit you is maybe not a good idea.
Okay. Good to know.
My sister-in-law, she's lived in the U.S. now for several years, and she can handle some spice now. But when she first moved here, everything was spicy. Everything's so spicy. Me pica. But like, it's not that their food isn't flavorful. It's very flavorful, but it's flavored with garlic and onion and red peppers. They don't like bell peppers. Not you're not gonna find jalapeno or habanero or ghost pepper or any crazy stuff from only certain parts of Mexico, by the way, because Central American food does not have the same spice as Mexico. And South American food is savory. It's not spicy unless you add a spice to it, and that will generally always be on the side. And I think people have that misconception.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, is family important in the Spanish culture? And what is the importance of family to you?
Okay, so family is, in my experience, family is a huge part of their culture. And they have, they stay with their family unit for a long time. In a lot of ways, the pandemic has maybe forced people in the United States back into that, or recessions in 2008 and the most recent one have kind of forced us back towards that. But living with your parents until you get married is much more common in Spain and into your 30s even, or once you're married until you have children. It has a little bit to do with like the Catholic culture, and the nuclear family being very important, and also until more recently divorce being very frowned upon culturally via Catholics. But again, if you're not as much of a practicing Catholic, they are very liberal in all things as well. Very accepting of differences generally, and also, but it's much harder to get divorced there. Separation of property is very difficult. So the legalities of the system that way are difficult. But otherwise, like your family is, that's your home base. And see, like Merci, my sister-in-law Mercedes is her full name, but then she goes by Merci. They're moving back to Spain. My brother and his wife and their 3 kids are moving back in August because her family all still live in their same little hometown. And every weekend they get together and they have like their family. They meet on the beach like once or twice a week, and they have dinner together once or twice a week. All of their holidays are all celebrated with huge parties where they stay up until 3, 4 in the morning, singing and celebrating together. And she just really misses that a lot. It's not that my family here in the U.S. doesn't do that, but the U.S. is so large, we tend to spread out a little bit more. And it's harder for everyone to come together. Like I said, her family just, they're such a, and her cousins, they have, it's very common for Spanish families to have like cousins that are like your siblings, or very close to being your siblings, and you call people who are just very close friends your cousins sometimes, and your parents' really good friends you might just call them your aunt and uncle. Linguistically, that's a difference. In some, like our family trees, when we go to make family trees here in English, we have like first cousin once removed, second
Yep.
cousin once removed,
Yeah.
all these removal
Yeah.
statements.
Yeah.
In Spanish, they don't remove anybody; they're just cousins.
Okay.
So they're just, you can have a great aunt or uncle, or
Right.
a great grandparent or whatever, but also they don't usually differentiate. It's just cousin. No,
Sure.
it's my cousin. You
Sure.
can be your third cousin.
Sure.
It's just your cousin.
Yeah.
You treat them that way as well.
Yeah.
And so, you know, they do take a lot of, there's a lot of importance on the family. And Mercy's family, my sister-in-law's family especially, like they have, my brother and his wife Mercy, they'll be taking over like the original family home.
Mm-hmm.
And that home has like a courtyard with a garden, and it has a small pool. And so by taking over, by buying the house from their grandparents, they are now going to be hosting all of the family gatherings.
Sure.
It has the great room where every Christmas is held.
Yeah.
One of her uncles bought a house that has a huge garage, and they don't use it as a garage. They use it to host the paella, which is just paella, yes, is a pot, but they use that, and everybody goes to the beach, and they come up from the beach, and then they make a paella when they just have a big party there. Mercy's been here for several years, but every family wedding, she flies home for.
Sure.
You know, it's not. I think it's not maybe financially possible for all families to be able to do that for her family. And fortunately, that's definitely a privilege that she has.
Yeah.
Here in the U.S., we do not all have that privilege either. My family, for example, we would not be able to just fly whenever we needed to.
Right.
Like, do whatever, but, you know, that's our circumstance.
Yeah.
We all live close enough, fortunately, or an hour we can drive.
Right.
So,
yeah.
But, I mean, to me, family is very important. I'm actually quite sad that my brother is moving. I currently work as a teacher, and my husband is also a teacher, and, you know, I recently finished grad school, so I have student loans to pay off and things like that, which, by the way, in Spain, that's not really an issue because your schooling, undergraduate, is extremely cheap.
Yeah.
It's not free.
Yep.
And grad school, and I think my sister-in-law paid $2,000 for it.
Wow.
Total. And then just had to pay for housing.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, me paying off my student loans and working as a teacher is going to make it cost prohibitive for me to be able to go visit my niece and nephew in Spain. The only good thing is that once you get to a place like Spain, a person can live in Spain for like €1,200 a month for rent for each apartment. And so it's cheaper to live there once you're there.
Yeah.
So going to visit would be, once you get there, it's not terribly expensive. And because we have family there, we'll be able to visit. You know, it's one of those things. It can be cost prohibitive for us here in the United States to travel because of our distances.
Right.
Everything is much closer in Spain.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not that big of a deal for them. And like I said, for me, family is really important. We get together as often as we possibly can. But it's those different distances and differences in jobs that make it whereas note that in Spain, almost everybody has a month longest off as vacation.
Okay.
And so they all hang out, have like big celebrations for that month. They spend all that time together.
Yeah. What are Spanish weddings like, and how do they compare to weddings in the U.S.?
Well, Spanish weddings, I can't say that I've been to. I mean, my brother got married in Spain to Mercy. And they had a Catholic wedding. My parents and my brother flew over for that, and my mom was part of the ceremony, and Mercy's father was part of the ceremony. The ceremony was all in Latin and Spanish in her home cathedral. Some people will have their children baptized just so they can have their weddings in 20 or 30 years down the road when they get married, just so that they know that their kids can have their wedding in their town cathedral or whatever. And so you can't just like go anywhere and get married. My my brother, however, was able to live in Spain before they got married because after 1 year in a committed relationship, you are considered like full domestic partnership
Sure.
partners there,
Okay.
and you are granted like a residency
Yeah.
in Spain. So it's a different thing in the United States where you have to. It doesn't matter. I am married to my husband, and he's not a citizen of the United States. And him being married to me doesn't make it easier for him to become a citizen of the United States. It would make it easier for him to come to the United States, maybe, depending on where he's from.
Yeah.
But he still has to go through all of the same hoops as everyone else for his citizenship, instead of just being a resident alien. But Carl was able to be a full resident there in a domestic partnership, and they were considered by the government to be as close to married as you can be before actually getting married.
Yeah.
And then, so their marriage, they had it in the town's Catholic cathedral, with a full mass. That is very, very typical for a Catholic, practicing or non-practicing Catholic family. If you were born Catholic, practice Catholic, to do it the traditional way is still very common. There's a status that goes with doing that as well, like being able to have your wedding in a cathedral, and also Spain is one of the most, I would say, has one of the most thriving wedding fashion economies that I've ever witnessed or seen, because of the number of cathedrals they have, the number of wedding dress shops they have is insane, and there's everywhere. And so they had their full ceremony. We walked. It was Mercy was walked on the aisle by her father. My mom stood with Carl at the front of the church, and as the mother of the groom had some special things to do in the ceremony. Then with Mercy's father, and then afterwards, Carl and Mercy walked out and had this full rice thrown at them, and then they went off and had their wedding reception. In Spain, they do, food, and my brother Christopher had the responsibility of walking around and introducing. He was collecting, I think, a traditional, at least in Mercy's family, if not in, he collected special coins or money for the bride and groom from the family. That was one of his jobs during the reception. Carl and Mercy went around and talked with everyone. They had a full meal and a dance with a DJ. And then once that party was done at the venue, which for Carl and Mercy was inside a cave on one of the Gran Canaria up in the mountains. Then they took anybody who wasn't older, then hopped on a bus and went to a dance club in town, and they had some bar hopping and some dancing at one of the regular clubs. And everybody who was still mobile went. So her parents went. I don't think my parents went, but my brother went. And, and everybody from town, and then eventually they all got home, but it wasn't until almost dawn, which is much more typical in Spain to stay out dancing until the sun comes out. But
how many people usually go to like Spanish weddings?
I think that's just like here. It's going to depend. Mercy's family is huge, so theirs was large. As far as with. But the only thing is that my side of the family wasn't really there because we were here in the 80s. So, had we all been there, it probably would have been over 300. But with her family there, I'm sure it was over 100. She's got, it was family first and then friends. And, the only other people involved in the ceremony were God.
Yeah.
So, but otherwise, everyone from town could have been invited to.
Yeah.
Just because it was in that cathedral.
Yeah.
If they knew her, they would have come.
Yeah.
But the reception would have been family and friends.
Right. Yeah. Okay. What is Spanish art like, and is Spanish art important to you?
Spanish art, I mean, it's varied. It's, like I said, there are cave drawings, and you can go visit the cave drawings.
Yeah.
And there's Picasso and Gaudi and
Yeah.
Dali and, like, all sorts of insanely, incredibly famous artists from Spain as well. Spanish art, I mean, to me, when I was in Spain, when I did my study abroad in Spain, I studied art and architecture. That's what I focused on.
Yeah.
Just something I never got to study in the U.S.
Yeah.
Like, air quotes, college track in high school, which meant science and math
Yep.
and social studies
Yeah.
and English and like AP science
Right.
and AP English.
Right.
And I took Spanish
Mm-hmm.
all throughout, right? But when I was in Spain, then I decided, well, I'm here.
Yeah.
Why not get taught about art and architecture and then walk around the actual city where the art and architecture is and get taught about it? And what's beautiful about what I love about going to Europe, especially because my personal interests there are much more, I guess, I love classical
Sure.
art, and I guess you could walk up to the place. We could go into the museum for our art lesson, right?
Yeah.
And in Spain, especially when you have access, like when I lived in Sevilla, my architecture teacher would take us, we left on a field trip every day.
Yeah.
There was no sitting in the classroom.
Yeah.
He'd take us out to a monument.
Yeah.
He'd tell us about the sculptor, the story of the sculptor. What does it mean when there's only there's only two legs of the horse and standing on the ground? Because that has a different significance in paintings and in sculpture than when there are three legs, or one leg, or four legs on the ground. And just like talking about those things there and learning in person, it's much more. I mean, as a teacher, when you talk about different learning styles and things like that, it hits all of them. Like you can take notes, you can, your auditory learning, listen to it, but that whole visual sense of actually being able to go up and maybe not touch everything, but like walk around it, see it in 3D. Being able to go to the art, Museo de Bellas Artes in Sevilla, like so going to the, art museum in Seville and walking through and being able to talk about the artist. This one's from Seville.
Right.
This is this and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you talk about different techniques
Yeah.
and look at the strokes, or these were the paints they were using at the time, and this is why. And it's an incredible feeling to be there in history, looking at history, talking about the people. It's a very different thing than like going to an art appreciation in college. It's a very different thing.
Yeah.
Than like going and sitting in a lecture hall and put up a slide or a picture of that piece of work, and then you talk about it.
Yeah.
Imagine going to see the Guernica.
Yeah.
Picasso's most famous piece that he did in Spain. About the revolution, about the war, about suffering, and the politics of the time. Why did Picasso not do the majority of his work in Spain? The war, right? But those are his people. Picasso is Spanish.
Yeah.
Like you look at the Guernica and it's there. It's huge, but you have to go to Madrid to see that in person. There's two major art museums in Madrid. It's a field trip when you're there.
Right. Yeah.
Being able to go walk around Barcelona and look at the architecture of Gaudi. There's a neighborhood that he inspired, that he, and there's a reason for and learning about it and watching it, and looking at the beauty in the buildings. It looked like a garden, as opposed to just a painting of a garden or a picture of those buildings.
Right.
It's a very, different feeling.
Yeah.
When you walk into a cathedral, the cathedral is art.
Right.
It's not just a building.
Yeah.
Like, it's we just don't build things like that in the U.S. Nothing like that exists here. It's not that we don't have beautiful places or there isn't beautiful art here, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
We went to the Dali Museum in Barcelona. Like, you walk around this random neighborhood and, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
You go in and there are the original sculptures and, like, you've got Cubism, you've got, you've got, the surrealism,
Yeah.
and, like, it's all, like, you can see it all.
Right.
But to be able to, like, talk about it and then talk about it within that more historical context, but also in the place that inspired it, or that to me is incredible. When you go and you see something like Las Muñecas, or like another painting of the royals, but you actually have been to the palace in Spain, like being able to give it that context too is like, and like it's just Las Meninas, right? Like you go and you see it, and you're like, yeah, like this is where they live.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
It's like it's different than going to like the Louvre and you see the Mona Lisa.
Right.
But being in Italy and like looking at that landscape that's painted behind the Mona Lisa versus like just going and seeing the Mona Lisa in the Louvre.
Sure.
Which is cool, but like it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like whereas you see the Guernica, about the war, and you can go outside and literally see bullet holes in buildings.
Right.
That gives it so much more.
Right.
To me, that's
more impactful.
It's way more impactful.
Yeah.
You remember more.
Right.
And again, like I said, I love being able to go and see the brushstrokes.
Yeah.
Or like, he's not Spanish, but like when you go and you see Monet's work.
Sure.
In the period of time where he was losing his sight. It wasn't like you could see the anger, you could see frustration in the colors, not just that, also the techniques are different. Like, just things like that.
Sure. How do people from Spain usually celebrate their birthdays?
So it's going to be dependent on age, right?
Yes.
And I will say this, I was more a college student age or in my 20s when I was in Spain, and so there was a lot more partying. But birthdays are, in Spain people don't necessarily throw you a birthday, you throw yourself a birthday party and you invite others and you pay for everything.
Okay.
So, because anytime you invite someone to do something, you buy.
Right.
That's how it works in Spanish culture. Like overall, usually if you go to a restaurant, you go to a restaurant. And the person whose birthday it is, if you're the one who invited you, then you will pay. You will be gracious.
Sure.
You will pay. And it's not, gifts aren't necessarily a huge part of it. Especially, the older you get.
Right.
But sharing beverages, bringing something to share if it's at someone's home. That's a big thing. And then there's always the dessert. But desserts in Spain are somewhat different. For example, for a Spanish person, a waffle is a dessert. So you go around and you can go to a cake shop and buy a cake made with layers of Belgian waffles. And in between, and there will be like frosting or something like that. But if you think about it, pancakes and waffles are the dessert of breakfast.
Yeah.
With syrup. With syrup, sugar.
Yeah.
So, it makes sense, but it's also different. But they have, like different types of desserts as well.
Right.
They're not going to all be like our cake.
Right.
Cupcakes.
Right.
I mean, they might be a thing now, but that's only because globalization has really, spread a lot of, United States foods and cultures, like cake culture elsewhere.
Yeah.
But it's not like you're walking around to find a cake pop at somebody's birthday party in Spain.
Right. I know. Yeah.
They all usually have like their family recipe or like a family tradition.
Yeah.
Piñata's not a thing in Spain.
Okay. Sure.
But hosting is.
Yeah.
There will always be music. There will always be music.
Okay.
Almost always.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. What are some Spanish games that are popular?
So, other than sports,
Yeah, so this can be like board games or like games that you might find at like a wedding or a party. Yeah.
okay. Well, a lot of Spanish culture is based around like being social and face to face.
Mhm.
So games that they would have are going to be more like interpersonal. Games that I learned while I was there, like we didn't play a lot of card games, but Rumiku,
No.
which is like playing rummy,
Sure.
but with tiles.
Okay.
A little bit like mahjong, but not mahjong,
Yeah.
and like rummy, but with tiles. So like going for a three of a kind or a straight,
Sure.
right? Kind of a thing. And it reminded me of gin, kind of
Yeah.
gin
Yeah.
rummy,
Yep.
but not with cards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that they don't play cards, but it's not as big of a deal at like a party.
Sure.
They would play. Well, I'm trying to think what it's called. Let's see. Well, chess.
Yeah. Yep.
Chess is a big part of culture there. Being able to play chess. I think more of the time is spent like at a birthday party. More of the time is spent eating.
Sure.
You spend a lot of time eating. It's not like you eat a lot. You just eat over time. So it's like courses of food and things like that.
Yeah.
Because I spent my time mixed with, like people from the United States and Spain, we were sharing a lot of things. So like, as college students from the U.S., we do a lot of drinking games.
Yeah.
So we would take our drinking games over there and play. But like I said, I learned how to play Rumiku from Mercy's mother, and then they'd play. But the game isn't like, it was never like the most important thing you were doing.
Right. Right.
It was the
Being social.
Being social
Yeah.
and connection
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
people. And then if you got little kids at the party,
Yeah.
it's just chaos. They're just
Right.
running around like,
Yeah.
man, like, they're I didn't have the chance to attend a children's birthday party while I was there,
Yeah.
but here in the United States for my nieces and nephews, they don't usually have a theme necessarily for the birthday party. Mercy will always have a gift to give away to the kids. And that, like, that's normal. I would think like you have a gift bag that you give away.
Yep.
But usually they just let the kids have fun and then there's always dancing.
Yeah.
There's usually music.
Yeah.
Dancing.
Yeah.
And drinks.
Yeah.
Lots of drinks.
Yep.
And then in Europe, because they don't drive until they're over 18, even the teenagers and things like that will spend more time going out to a restaurant or things like that.
Right.
And going dancing. So
Right.
to me, it's less about the games. Like they just don't. I didn't see. It's not like they have like loteria or like. It's not that they don't play that.
Yeah.
It's not. That's not the stress of their like holidays.
Right.
And there are casinos and stuff there too.
Yeah.
It's not a huge part of their culture.
Yeah. Interesting.
Sports.
Yeah.
Sweet.
How do people from Spain usually dress for different occasions?
Well, here's the thing. They don't walk around in sweats ever, unless they're going to or from the gym or out for a run.
Yeah.
My favorite thing is that, like, even during siesta, like during the downtime, the hottest part of the day, you can go on the streets to go on a walk, and you see these little couples in their 70s or 80s dressed in a suit.
Oh my god.
Or, like, the woman would be in her blazer and skirt, and walking on the street.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go outside unless you are dressed
Yep.
to be seen.
Yeah.
And again, like, culture might shift because athleisure is a thing now, but like that wearing sweatpants to school or pajamas to school or
Right.
college
Right.
is unheard of
Yeah.
in Spain. Because that is your job. It is a sign of disrespect to go and show up in front of a teacher wearing you would wear to bed,
Yeah.
wear at home to lounge in.
Yeah.
So if you want to be seen as someone who is serious about what you're doing, you want to be taken seriously, you want to show respect, you show up dressed.
Okay.
So nobody walks out of their house in the morning unless they're put together.
Yeah.
They are very fashion forward, so they're like sometimes the Spanish fashions I don't look at them and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a lot of those Spanish fashions that were fashionable 10 years ago are now fashionable here in the United States. It just took us more time to tag on.
Right.
So yeah. Oh, also you would never wear sandals unless they were like dress shoes.
Got it.
Most women walk around even on cobblestone streets in high heels if they're going to their job.
Oh my gosh.
And I was shocked. Like I would have broken all of my ankles by now.
Yep.
All of them.
So, is there like a dress code in schools?
Usually.
Yeah.
So here's the sad state of education in Spain. Not that they don't have good education. It's just that like if you're a teacher in Spain, you try to send your kids to the private schools.
Yeah.
And private schools have, of course, dress codes and uniforms, right? Even public schools will have a minimum kind of dress. Yeah. I'm not sure that they all have uniforms, but generally you see kids going to school, especially the little kids, going to school in uniforms and stuff like that. Or my brother worked at a childcare when he was first living there after teaching in a school, and they all had like the shirt of the childcare or whatever that you wear. But yeah, most elementary schools will also have a uniform, like wear a white button down and blue pants, kind of like we would have at our parochial schools. Yeah, you'd see more like that in our parochial schools here. It might make shopping more simplified.
Sure.
Yeah. But
yeah. It's cool how different it is from there and here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Private schools are seen as more, well, they're of better quality, but also their teacher pay is much better across the board.
Sure.
In Spain. Yeah. Because they have basically a minimum standard of living with socialized healthcare and stuff like that, so you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to get your health insurance through your job.
Right.
And stuff
Yeah.
like that. And being a teacher in Spain is difficult because you don't get to choose your placement. The state sends you to a school, so it could just be in whatever town you don't get to choose.
Right. So. Leading into that, how is the education system different in Spain?
Well, like I said, so many people think that their private education is better than their public education. Right. Not that they don't have good public schools there, but their teachers don't get to choose where they want to work. Okay. The state chooses where they work. And so you could be from Sevilla and get placed in Madrid, and you'd have to move to Madrid. Sure. You don't get a choice. Even if your husband works in Cadiz or Sevilla or wherever, you have to go where they place you. Yeah. It's not until you have more seniority that you might be able to choose. There isn't necessarily any merit-based judgment on where you go or how you get placed. So like, oh, you're a really good teacher, we want you here. Or I would also say that special education services are behind us. They're coming along, but they're behind. Yeah. not that they don't, they offer a lot of services, but they don't have as many specialized programs. I would say their diagnoses, they don't have as many diagnosing teams or
Sure.
things like that.
Sure.
I'm not sure if it's a result of socialized medicine
Yeah.
just having it take longer, or if it's
Right.
because for so long they didn't believe in looking for differences and things like that.
Yeah.
Their structure, the school structure, is also much more rigid. Many foreign exchange students will say, like, you here in the United States, we have so many options for electives, and your sports are part of school, whereas in Spain, if you want to do a sport, it's outside of school, it's an extra fee, it's a club.
Yeah.
So not having that be part of school, not everyone is guaranteed to learn those skills or be able to do that. In addition, their classwork is much more geared towards read-write learners and oral visual learners. So, like, unless you are older and getting into an apprenticeship or tracks, where you're going into a field like a mechanic or something like that, it's very cerebral, lots of note taking and things like that. And your grades are based much more on like 1 or 2 tests a year, so it's much more like college that way.
Sure.
Even for high schoolers.
Sure.
So they'll have their exams at the end of the year, and if you want to score 6 or better, out of 10, 9s are sobresalientes, so like that's like really high. And a lot of your achievement after high school is going to be based on your test scores in high school.
Okay.
Like what universities or programs that you can get into are going to be based on that. We have similar structure, but at the same time, in the U.S., we are catering to many more learning styles. We have our own issues. Don't get me wrong, we have lots of issues. But we are doing, I believe, a better job of serving students with neurodivergence and cognitive issues.
Yeah.
And helping them become contributing members of society and not just relying on social systems.
Sure. Yeah. What is your favorite Spanish holiday?
Oh, Lord. Let's see. I really enjoyed football when I was in Spain, so this happened in spring, usually after Easter. In Sevilla, that's when theirs was. It's just like a week-long party. This is also the time of year when they host I'm not sure, it's not legal everywhere anymore, but they had bullfighting. So there were bullfights in Sevilla, the Corrida de Toros, and it's just everybody's out, everybody's partying. A lot of the more affluent people in town or businesses or big families will all have their own tent at the fairgrounds.
Yeah.
And so if you know someone or you're part of that family, every night of that week you go to that tent and you party. And but the whole city's it's dressed up and they wear their traditional clothing. So stuff like the dresses. Their suits, things like that. There's lots of concerts and carnival type things going on. It's a fair.
Yeah.
But they have the fairgrounds, and then it spills into the city, and people are just out and about looking around. Let's see.
And you mentioned bullfighting.
Yes.
How does that kind of fit into the Spanish culture? Will you talk about that?
Okay,
What was your
I'm
opinion?
a small town girl from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I grew up farming and chasing.
Yep.
Animal death is something that I have seen a lot growing up. Of course, it's done either because the animal was sick or for food purposes, right?
Yeah.
So, Corrida de Toros is a very different experience.
Right.
Culturally in Spain and in some other parts of the world, it does still hold for some people a very important significance. Technically, it was considered an art.
Sure.
It's an art form.
Okay.
And it's supposed to look like a dance.
Right.
And it's the dance of good versus evil, or like the monster versus man, right? And man being overcome and conquer.
Yeah.
Right? So there's that. There's a lot of traditions that come with it. But they're also it's also very gruesome, and it can be horrifying. And
Right.
the death of the bull can be prolonged.
Yeah.
If the bullfighter isn't very good or doesn't make the right kill shot, one will just be horrific and also painful for the bull.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of like scandals about how they're treating the bull, or there's a lot of differences in countries and their regulations.
Yeah.
The ones that I went to one that was interesting because it was called Corrida de Rejones, which is the bullfighters were actually on horseback the whole time, and the horses danced to the pasadona music. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Like, that part was awesome because the horses were dancing.
Sure.
And the bullfighter was on top of the horse
Yeah.
the whole time with doing all the things that they normally would, but the horse would have to dance on it.
Yeah.
The bull was chasing the horse.
Got it.
So you're also at this added thing of like, I love animals, I love horses, and I'm like, I don't want this horse to get bored by a bull either, right?
Yeah.
And so you're watching, that happen. And unfortunately, that one was done by professionals who were very, very good, and none of the deaths were awful,
Sure.
like, to watch.
Sure.
The other bullfight that I went to was done by novices,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one death that was
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
And now you can say that all deaths like that are bad, so I totally understand that.
Right.
It was a cultural experience with that. I've seen other bullfights in other countries that were not as, where none of the animals were cared for like these. It was interesting to see like the traditions around giving the bullfighter prizes, or the prizes being the tail of the bull, or the ear of the bull, the tongue of the bull. I know it's and like the cheering and the thumbs up and the thumbs down is very gladiator-like.
Yeah.
And it's very visceral, like these experiences that you have when you're there. One of my roommates that went with had to leave. She was very upset when she left.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Right.
I don't know how I feel personally about bullfighting.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, parts of it are very beautiful.
Sure.
I don't know how you would recreate it without the gore.
Yeah. Right.
And the horror of the animal being stabbed.
Yeah.
And the point at the end, the kill is a mercy.
Yep. Yeah.
I guess the only other good thing at the end is once the bull dies, they actually do use the blood, the meat.
Sure.
All of that gets sold in the market, and actually the price for all of those things is quite high because it comes straight from the corrida. So,
Sure.
the animal is quite pleased.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if that's good. It's just that it's not being wasted.
Right. Right.
That first word.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The suits the bull riders wear are very beautiful, and they're on display in the museum there at the Florida Cimo. So yeah, but in southern Spain, the bullfights usually only happen around that week. So but they're also banned in many parts, or if not most, or if not all by now,
Yeah.
parts of Spain. So
And what are there? Like, are there suits usually like a specific color? Like,
I'm not sure if it's a specific color, but they're traje de luces, so they're pseudo-flights.
okay.
They're literally glittery, sparkly,
Yeah.
like they're lots of gold and
Sure.
purple and
Sure.
red, and the bolero jacket. That's where
Yeah.
that comes from.
Yeah.
It comes from that pseudo-flights. They're very flashy.
Right.
Yeah. You can look up pictures of them later if you want to see.
Yeah, for sure.
They're cool.
Yeah.
I mean, and the fashion around it is cool. Again, it's another event where you don't go unless you dress.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And the town leaders and stuff, they have a box, and they're trying to impress the town leaders.
Yeah.
It's not, because it's a feudal
Right.
culture,
Right.
and the language, comes from feudal culture
Yeah.
as well. Entertain the rich.
Yep. Yeah. Sure. Yep. And then you mentioned like dancing. So what is the flamenco dance? Will you explain that?
Flamenco,
Yeah.
even though means flamingo.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
flamenco, the music. So if you think about it, the one foot in the air, then the stone,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It's the flamingo.
Yeah.
But the flamenco comes from the Romani people, so otherwise known as the gypsy people, that technically gypsy
Yeah.
is a derogatory term for the people. So the Romani people, and the Romani people have been persecuted for, well, forever in Europe, and they're in Spain, in the south of Spain. There is a large population of Romani people, and the flamenco music is a protest.
Sure.
It's a lament.
Okay.
So a lot of what you'll hear is the grita, like the screams, the cries. The music tells us, it's always going to tell a story. The story doesn't necessarily always tragic or sad, but the songs and the music is usually telling you a story of something that's going on and coming from your heart, your soul, and so it's very dramatic. And also because the Romani people were a roaming people, their music couldn't require a lot of different parts or different instruments. So it is a guitar and then a wooden box.
Okay.
And you might see castanets. So those are like the two shells that you would clack together, right? But typically it's taps on the shoes, the heel or the toe, and clapping.
Okay.
The box and the guitar. There's also the use of the Spanish fan. So the fans, because it's so hot in south of Spain, right? And also because it adds to the drama of the show.
Yeah.
And the dress, the flamenco dress, is often tight in the bodice and then flared out with crinoline underneath, or just with a flare, so that when you spin, it has movement. And then there will also be a little bit of a trail or a tail on it, so that you can pick it up and swing it around. And then hair is usually pulled back in a bun or a tight ponytail. And then there are some really cool barrettes or other structures that are part of the culture. Depending on the song or the dance, it can be very dramatic. There isn't a lot of smiling in the dancing.
Sure.
But it's stomping and a lot of tapping. There's some spinning. It's not like salsa, merengue, which is nothing like those, which are much more sensual and sexual or packed, maybe
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah.
But it's also very cool. One of the ways that you describe a movement in it is reach up with one hand,
Yep.
pick an apple,
Yep.
bring it towards your mouth,
Yeah.
and then put it in the basket,
Uh-huh.
right? And then you stomp, right? But flamenco is, I've seen more flamenco, like I said, mostly in the south of Spain, which is where the majority of the culture comes from, specifically Granada.
Yeah.
And Granada is very much tied to one specific area, the Albaicin, which is a neighborhood in Granada, up into the hills. And because it's a counterculture, it goes against mainstream culture, right? The people are protesting. It was illegal, or it used to be illegal for a long time. So they would perform in caves. And so the people, because they had to hide, would do their art in caves.
Okay.
And so there are these houses and bars and restaurants that are built into the hills in Granada. And they'll have stages in the back rooms.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when you go for a performance, it's you and maybe 10 other people in this room that is maybe 20 feet, 30 feet long.
Yeah.
And a little stage, and then the two musicians,
Yeah.
and one of them sings, and one dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's one dancer, it's usually almost always a female.
Yeah. I watched
There
2
are
videos. And
male dancers, but usually it's female.
when do the male dancers usually just come up? Because I watched one video on. This was in Spanish class. I watched one video of a girl, and then I watched one video of a girl and a boy. So when do the males usually?
Maybe if it's a love story.
Okay.
Yeah, but otherwise, the men would have been working, or they would have been playing the guitar,
Yeah.
or on the box drum.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Or singing.
Mhm.
A lot of the gringos are men, so a lot of the singers can be men.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be an older woman, or a woman with like in the United States, or in classical music, you can hear there's a very operatic voice. There's a style. And those of us who have studied voice, or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily listen to a flamenco singer and think, that's a fantastic classical voice, but it's not meant to be like that. It's a different sound.
Right.
Not that they aren't good singers, but but it's a different sound.
Yeah.
Some of it is almost like a whine or a cry, and then you're telling your story.
Right. Yeah.
Of a repressed people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a beautiful thing. And then the people from Spain, when they moved across the ocean to Mexico, and they brought that with them. And there are lots of parts of traditional culture in Mexico, and their dancing that have elements of that flamenco fashion and style and music in them. It's not going to be the same if there are similar things.
Right.
The footwork, the fan work, the dresses, the guitar.
Yeah.
But then, of course, mariachi is not Spanish. Mariachi is Mexican. So those are different, but they've taken elements and used it.
Yeah. How do Spaniards spend their free time?
Free time is very, very, very important to Europeans in general and Spaniards. Full-time work week in Spain is 32 hours maximum.
Yeah.
Vacation is very important. You do not live to work there, you work to live. You spend your time at work when you come home, and you put it away.
Yep.
You have your family, you have your friends, you go out, you take walks, you spend as much time as you possibly can in the outdoors or in leisure. One of the reasons why my brother and Mercy are moving back to Spain is because now that Timberland's paid off his student loans here as a physical therapist, which they were able to do because Mercy didn't have any student loans from getting her doctorate in Spain. And then she got a very good paying job here. So when he finished his grad school, they were able to live on one salary and then he was able to pay off his loans. Because, I mean, that takes privilege.
Yeah.
A lot of privilege. And so they want to move back there so that they can have that free time, that leisure. Where Merci is from, the Canary Islands because she's from Gran Canaria, which is where Las Palmas is.
Mm-hmm.
And her family's town is about 45 minutes away from there, and her mother's home in Gouda is about 7 kilometers from the coast beach. And so they also have an apartment at the beach. So 7 kilometers away, they have another apartment,
Yep.
right? Which is where they will spend their weekends.
Yeah.
Right? They'll go to the beach and
Right.
weekends, right? But you could just drive there,
Right.
too. But to spend all their free time they can outside in the pool or out on the beach.
Yeah.
That you go out in the evenings and you have your vino, your wine,
Yep.
or your cerveza, your beer at a little restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's around the town just kind of comes up and you just sit there and you chit chat.
Yeah.
It's not. That's what they live for.
Right.
They don't live to go to work in the morning.
Right.
But also their cost of living is lower, food is cheaper. It's a simpler life, a much less stressful life.
Right.
But that also comes from having a more socialist republic, so they have socialized medicine.
Yeah.
Now, there are downsides to that, but they don't have to worry about whether or not they can go to the doctor.
Yeah.
They can go.
Yeah.
They're not, it's not part of that hustle for them.
Right.
I mean, all systems have negatives. Mercy's sister is a nurse, and, for years her placements were very poor until she got some seniority. And now she has some seniority. It's difficult to buy property here.
Right.
But once you do, cost of living is relatively low. Food is really cheap. They have simple ingredients. They live by the ocean, so seafood is cheap.
Yeah.
It's also very healthy. So their foods are healthy. They use a lot of either public transit or they walk almost everywhere. On the islands, not as much because they don't have the infrastructure for buses, like the roads aren't wide enough for buses.
Right.
We traffic all the time. But because you're not worried about your car, this insurance, that insurance, you just don't waste that mental and emotional energy on all of those things. So that leisure time outside of work, they cook. You eat dinner in your last 2 hours. You sit and talk over that dinner.
Right.
I mean, of course they watch TV.
Right.
They have the news. They have bad news. They have other things going on in their lives. And some people have hard lives.
Yeah.
But their government also has a lot of support for them if they need it. And they were able to have a fairly low maintenance lifestyle.
Right.
If they, we have a job.
Right.
For a while, unemployment was extremely high, like over 50% for people in their 20s. So again, they were letting a lot of people stay and live with their parents for a long time. But then again, you're sharing costs and things like that. And so travel isn't going to be as often, but also travel isn't necessarily as far away. You can hop on a flight from Spain to Italy, or to Europe, 60 minutes. It's not the same thing as us trying to fly to Europe. Right? It's much closer. So their leisure, their weekends, their travel, it's all much closer.
Sure.
Yeah. Does that answer that question?
Yeah.
Do you have any follow-ups for me there?
No. Well, I will have one, but so you kind of talked about like the health. So how important is health, like hospitals, like nursing, like how does that compare to in like Spain rather than like the US?
I don't have a lot of experience with their medical system myself.
Sure.
Just knowing when Mercy has been pregnant, for example, she goes through she'll go through the genetic tests and stuff like that here. But insurance, here you have rules. You do this and this and this. You only get this certain amount or whatever. When she goes back to Spain, she'll go in and they'll do everything, and she'll get her results right away, and she's not like concerned about the cost of things, or sometimes it might take longer to get an appointment if you live in a very big city or something like that. But the care there, it's going to depend, of course, on where you are, and whatever. But you're going to get care.
Right.
They're in many Spanish-speaking countries. They're actually they don't have the same rules and regulations and politics mixed into their. Not as much politics mixed into their medical field.
Sure.
And because insurance companies aren't meddling in medicine and with things like that, they're actually able to make advances in areas where we can't, or use technology that we can't here in the United States because of whatever issues we have. So access to different things can be easier or harder based on that. Or getting into research studies can be easier because of that. I know that I kind of refer to her as my sister-in-law, Mercy's sister, working in nursing, being a young nurse is difficult because, like in teaching, you don't really get a lot of choice on where they place you.
Yeah.
So you don't know if you get kind of the crap shifts.
Right.
It's not. I know here in the U.S. that can be true as well, but depending on your specialty, sometimes then you get prime shifts or contracts that are different. They are full union, so there are a lot of union laws that restrict what they can do and where with seniority and things like that as well. So they have similar issues that way, but also with their placements. Their rules with placements are different based on the state. Like if you're working for a state facility versus a private facility. I think there are fewer private facilities. Although my brother, as a physical therapist, when he wants his pain wants to open, he's going to open his own practice. They're not out of their house. They have an office right off the street that is part of their house, but it's an office. So he plans to open up his own office for practicing physical therapy. There's probably hoops and stuff that he's going to jump through with the government, but he'll be able to do that, and they have with socialized medicine, if you need care, he'll be able to get care, or you can pay out of pocket. In that's an issue. What's beautiful about going to in Spain, you can go to a pharmacy and get a lot of medications that we here in the United States have to have prescriptions for. Even if you know you need it. So, like, you could go to a pharmacist and tell them your symptoms, and the pharmacist can actually say, "Oh, this is what you need."
Got it.
And they'll give it to you. You buy it there. Same thing, though, in South America, Central America. You can go to a pharmacist for a lot more things than you don't have to go to a doctor for, which is nice. Here, we have to jump through all of the also, dental and visual are just automatically part of their system. It's not a separate thing like here in the U.S., which is, in my opinion, crap. Because it's all part of health. I don't know why we have to have separate visual and dental insurance rather than physical health. That doesn't make any sense to me. There still is a fair amount of stigma for mental health there. I mean, in the system, but you can still get help for that. Mercy blew her ACL here in the U.S. one of her first years here because she was playing ultimate frisbee. That's how she and my brother met when they were in Spain on a beach on a weekend playing ultimate frisbee. Gee, bummer. Nice to meet you, Peter. Cute, right? So anyway, because she blew her ACL and she was shocked at how fast she could get her surgery here. So that is something to think about. Is that like surgeries or bigger procedures, you might have really longer. So wait list is longer because you have access to more. Or everyone has access. So that's the thing. But like I said, it's not as difficult to get
Sure.
in
Right.
or to get in where you don't have to freak out because you don't
Right.
have care.
Right.
The state
Yeah.
gives you the care.
Right.
It's a matter of whether or not the timing is to be
Right.
aligned with exactly what you need.
Right. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense.
She has chosen to have all 3 of her children here in the U.S.
Right.
In our medical system.
Do they have like emergency rooms there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And is there like, so I know our waits here for the ER can be very long. Is that kind of the same for there?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've never had to go to the ER there.
Right.
I have had to go to the ER multiple times here in the
Yeah.
U.S. because of my anaphylactic response to an allergen.
Yeah.
And I will say that if you're going into an ER with an urgent situation, right, I can't breathe, I get through triage within 30 minutes.
Sure.
If not less. The
Sure.
last time was a week and a half ago. I actually was through triage and being treated within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's going to depend on whether or not it's a life or death situation
Right.
here in the U.S. If you go in because you have a sore throat and you're in the ER because
Right.
there's no urgent care, yeah, you're going to see
Yeah.
pain. But,
Yeah.
but, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I haven't been back to Spain now in a while, but we have urgent care clinics all over the place. I don't think they have the same type of thing, but at the same time, you can go to the pharmacy
Right.
and be like, I have a sore throat.
And you can get your medicine there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that.
Right.
And during the pandemic, they had a lot of issues as well, so that's something to look into. Especially
Yeah.
if that's something that you're interested in.
Yeah.
It's how different countries in the Spanish-speaking world dealt with the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, cool.
What is a traditional Spanish breakfast like?
So, breakfast is sometimes toast, like fresh bread every day or every other day.
Yep.
And then you would like cut it in half, toast it, and then drizzle olive oil on top, and you might put like diced tomatoes and ham, like ham or like looks like bacon bits, but it's not bacon, it's actual ham.
Yeah.
So that's a typical breakfast in Spain. My sister, like cereal, they have cereal.
Yeah. Is
milk.
oatmeal popular?
Not like it is here.
Sure.
I mean, I eat it, but
Yeah.
no fruit.
Yeah.
Eggs are considered more of a dinner because they're so like heavy.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have like scrambled eggs out or what like you have. That's more of a dinner.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of carbohydrate for their breakfast.
Sure.
I would say like toast and with a topping or a cereal. If it's cold, I'm sure they would do a hot cereal. Some milk or juice and coffee like coffee.
Yep.
Europe gets some of the best coffee in the world.
Yeah.
They don't send top tier coffee to the US. Top tier coffee goes to Europe first, and then here, and then it stays in. And then like the third tier coffee stays in the country where it's usually.
And do people have like access? Like, is there Starbucks there? Like, is there?
There are Starbucks there, yes, but you don't need to go to Starbucks here.
Sure. And do people tend to like eat breakfast at home, or do people like go out to eat breakfast?
Stay at home.
Sure.
If you're not gonna stay at home, you might stop at the little corner cafe, like a little bar.
Yeah.
And get your coffee con leche, so your coffee with milk, and then you might have a pastry.
Okay.
Or your toast.
Right.
There. But they're not gonna go out and have like a big brunch like we do. It's not the same. You go out for lunch.
Yeah.
At like 3 in the afternoon or whatever, or dinner. That's much more of a smaller breakfast, smaller lunch, and then a bigger, longer dinner. Because you eat later at night, but then you also stay up later. Right. You wake up later at night. So, but again, there's like bakeries and pastries and like, different things like that. So you could grab something on your way, sure. But, and yes, there are Starbucks everywhere, but that's because of the tourism.
Yep.
Mostly.
Chain. Yep.
And now people who are there will have it, but nobody there is going to spend like every day. The Spanish people are very frugal.
Yeah.
Overall, I would say they're not going to spend $6 on a coffee.
Right. Right.
When you could get a coffee and like a pastry for €3 at your neighborhood coffee shop. Because most people in Europe live in cities. In every city block or two, there's going to be everything you need. So there's a bookstore with stationery, there's a grocery store, there's a cafe, there's a bar, there's a restaurant, there's a dance bar, on every few blocks.
Okay.
So you don't have to go very far to eat.
Sure.
So it's all going to be there.
Yeah. How do Spanish people usually greet each other?
So greetings, and this is largely, I would say, largely overall, not just Spanish culture, but in the Spanish-speaking world.
Yeah.
People are very, very polite.
Yep.
And they're all very, very social, or they pretend, like, it's not pretend to be social, but greetings are very important. So it's a hug, or a handshake with 2 cheek kisses. Depending on the country or your relationship with someone, it could be 2 kisses or 3 kisses.
Yeah.
And it's cheek touches or actual kisses, depending on your relationship with someone. But even strangers will be shaken a 1 cheek touch or more. It's not abnormal to see people walking down the street arm in arm or holding hands, boys and boys, like we're friends, or things like that. Men kiss each other on the cheek, women kiss each other on the cheek, vice versa. And they're very polite, like hello, how are you? Like it's very nice to see you. Like all introductions are very formally like polite and kind. And then when you see each other, it's always the same, like the hug and the kiss. Like every time I see my brother and my sister-in-law, it's hug and 2 or 3 kisses. Same thing. They're teaching my nephews those things because culturally, like they have to deal with it. So I work on that every time we go over, like a kiss and on the cheeks, or I love you, and things like that. And culturally, they need to learn. And so it's not just a handshake or a hello or things like that, or bro. There's no bro. I mean, amongst friends, sure, but even amongst guy friends, you hug.
And then, kind of going off of that, so is there just a lot of like inclusion in Spain?
Meaning what? By
inclusion? So you said like a lot of people are just like really nice there, and they greet each other like really nicely. So like gay couples, is there like a lot of inclusion with that too?
Okay, so I would say yes.
Yeah.
Even though the country overall is like culturally Catholic,
Yeah.
at the same time, a lot of people are either atheists or agnostics, and so like that whole like the Catholicism and its issues with the LGBTQAI community, it's not as big of a cultural like deal as we have here in the U.S. They let people be. So people individually might have their own issues, but we don't see as much outright hate on the street. I would say pride is a huge deal there, just like it is in big cities like New York. San Francisco. So Madrid has pride, like other big cities will have pride. Yes, they're very inclusive, but also like here in the U.S., there's always been like this idea of man, like a man should be, and like here up in this part of the, like the lumberjack, the big beefy dude with their beard and their their flannel shirt or whatever. In Spain, because everyone goes out dressed all the time, like they work in an office, it's like business or business casual all the time. Like looking like you take care of yourself and having your hair done and maybe going to get a manicure or a pedicure all the time for a man is not that big a deal. So like men looking like they are into fashion or they're well dressed or they wax their eyebrows or they might wear that's not that big a deal in Spain. So it might be harder for you to like look at someone and say, oh, they're gay, or because in Spain a lot of men take care of themselves that way. And the whole um, lumberjack look that we have going on here is not really a thing there.
Yeah.
And so it might be harder to differentiate. Plus, fashion is much more
Yeah.
there. And so, like, people aren't looking at those things and thinking, what they will notice is if you're rude, they can pick out tourists right away or Americans right away because of the way we dress and our footwear, especially like our sandals.
Yeah.
Toes are out.
Yeah.
Dogs are out. With dirty feet.
Yeah.
Let's see. Things like that. But, I mean, yes, they are very polite. I mean, it's a very, very big deal being friendly.
Yeah.
And a lot of Spaniards have said that they like Americans because Americans are loud, just like Spaniards are loud. Like, conversations are not often hushed and quiet. People are effusive and they gesture and they talk a lot and they're loud, right?
Yeah.
So they don't mind, like, people from the U.S. who are also that way there.
Right.
What they would find offensive is if you didn't, like, cry their things or if you were giving dirty looks or... but we'll say this, that as a person from a small town, I'm used to, like, smiling at people on the street.
Yeah.
You don't always get a lot of smiles back when people are going to and from places, but it's different when you're trying to talk to someone. The only, in movies about France, wherever, you have the concierge, the idea that the concierge at the hotel is going to be a jerk or whatever, or, like, at the hotel they're going to be... In Spain, it's more like the shop girls. So, like, if you go into a store, they are not always very, like, helpful or kind to you, especially if you don't look like they think you should look. You have the body type that, like, they have not always been very inclusive, size inclusive, or I would say that that's an issue there. Size inclusivity.
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting.
it's kind of tough for fat people there. Not that there aren't fat people there, but and for women to try to dress in style or with fashion in Spain because being skinny is is still very in there. Not that they don't appreciate or fashionably, it's difficult.
What piece of advice would you give to somebody who might be traveling to Spain?
Well, there's so much advice. I don't know. Like, you have to do your research.
Right.
There's so much to see. It's so many places to go. You need to know what your priorities are. Are you there for the food? Are you there for the art? Are you there for the history? What is it that, like, is there a specific region in Spain that you want to see? It isn't a huge country, but because each region has, like, there's multiple different languages spoken in Spain, not just Spanish. And therefore, because language is so tied to culture, like, those regions that have their own languages are also going to have such different things to go see. Like, you need to know what you want to see. I have not yet had the opportunity to go and see much of the north of Spain. I've seen a lot of the south, and I've been to the Canary Islands. Now, of course, I fell in love with the south of Spain. And it's hard for me to say I want to go back to Spain and then not go see the things that I've already seen. And, like, the things that I love and feel like they're home for me. But, they're just, like, in Galicia, it's so different from Andalusia. So you have to do your research and you have to know what you want to do. Do you want to go do the walk? Like the pilgrimage walk? Do you want to go to Bilbao and see, like, modern art there? Or do you want to go to the Maria Luisa or, in Madrid and see what's there? Because, when we travel, we usually have a finite amount of time. So you need to know what you want to see. And then there's always the difference between hotels and hostels. How old are you? What comforts do you need? And how comfortable are you sharing with strangers? Are you going alone as a female? If you're going alone as a female, don't go to hostels, right? But I just, like, you have to do your research that way. Traveling to Spain, it's going to be difficult for you if you don't speak any Spanish. Yes, they learn English. They're hesitant to speak it.
Right.
In my experience, unless you're at one of the very, very touristy sites.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you want the more authentic experiences where you're going to like your own, off on your own to do your own things, you're going to want to know some Spanish.
Yeah.
Don't trust Google Translate all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And like look at a second source or a third
Yeah.
source. And then like you have to be open and trying new things. It's
Yeah.
going to be very hard for a vegetarian or a vegan there.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Do you have any other specific questions about that? Because I feel like there's so much. Like, you do your research, know what you want to see.
Right.
Because, like, you could spend a week in Madrid and not see anything.
Right.
You could go to Barcelona and spend a week and not see everything.
Right.
And in Granada, there's so much to see. In Sevilla, in Cordoba, in Cádiz, like, Cádiz, there might be like, you could spend a day in Cádiz and see everything you need to see, but if you've done a lot of research, there's more stuff there.
Yeah.
For me, Cádiz, there was enough. One day was enough.
Right.
Like, and then you're right by Portugal. Portugal and Spain share a lot of culture.
Mm-hmm.
So, different languages, but a lot of culture. And so, do you want to go there? Do you want to go to Gibraltar?
Right.
I do recommend doing guided tours of places or with the audio.
We have audio, yeah.
Because unless you're an expert in the art or the location or the architecture, the more you can learn about a place when you're actually there in it, the better you
Yeah.
the more meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I have any follow-up questions. So.
Any other randomness, like, about Spain? Or, like, I say, like, if you're going to Spain, you have to go to Granada.
Uh-huh.
You have to spend time in Granada. There's a lot to see. And then Madrid, do all the royal things.
Yeah.
And the art museums.
Yeah.
In Sevilla, there's the Alcazar, which is the palace, and the cathedral. There's a lot of more modern things in Sevilla, too, because it's a pretty modern city. But the architecture in Sevilla is insane. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Around the cathedral. Oh, don't let anybody take your hand. How's that? Because when they take your hand, sometimes they're trying to sell you something and they won't give you your hand back until you give them money.
Great.
Yeah. Don't let them take your hand. It's a trick to get you to pay for your freedom.
Yeah.
It's like panhandling.
Yeah.
They do a different.
Yeah. Yeah.
They might tell you that they're going to curse you if you don't pay them to run away. And no offense, Julia, but because you're a blonde, blue-eyed girl, you know, they're just going to come straight for you.
Yep.
Let's see. Cordoba, you have to go to the Mezquita. And I think that on any trip, you need to find yourself time at a beach.
Yeah.
And the Mediterranean beaches are awesome.
Is the water blue? Or is it, like, brown?
Blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, I also went to Lagos in Portugal and had one of the best times I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And that's Portugal.
Yeah.
And I think that everyone should study abroad. Because they can't take that experience away from you.
Yep.
And you might have to pay for it on student loans. That really sucks. But again, they can never take the education that you get away from you.
Right.
And the things that you learn about yourself and about the world is invaluable to your future. And if you can fit it in, or even if you have to take an extra semester, I just do it.
Yeah.
Because once you get to Europe, it's so cheap to go other places. In Europe as well. And don't be scared. Take the classes in Spanish.
Yeah.
Even if you suck at it, or even if you're afraid, just try.
Yeah.
It's, when else are you going to have those experiences?
Exactly. Yeah.
Don't let fear rule your life.
Yep. Well, I think that's it. So thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.